Good morning, dear students, and welcome back to this session. And in this session, we are going to discuss Merchant of Venice Act 1, Scene 1 from line number 123 to 138. So, in the last speech, we saw that Bassanio was explaining to Antonio that Gratiano is one of the most talkative person presently living in Venice, and he speaks an infinite deal of nonsense. And the speech of Gratiano is just like 2 grains of good sense hidden in 2 bushels of nonsense. However, the main purpose of Bassanio coming to Antonio was to seek Antonio's help, because Bassanio wanted to present himself as a worthy suitor to Portia and wanted to participate in the lottery of casket in Belmont. In order to present himself as a worthy suitor to Portia, he was in need of money, and he had spoken to Antonio about it earlier. However, he had not disclosed to Antonio about his purpose. So here Antonio inquires of Bassanio, "Well, tell me now, what lady is the same to whom you swore a secret pilgrimage that you today promised to tell me of?" So Bassanio had promised Antonio that he would disclose all his plans to Antonio on that particular day. He had also informed Antonio about a lady to whom he had swore a secret pilgrimage, to whom he has promised to visit secretly. Here the word pilgrimage is to be taken note of. Pilgrimage is actually a journey to a holy place, and those people who travel to a holy place for religious reasons, they are called pilgrims. So here Belmont is the place of pilgrimage, and if Belmont is the place of pilgrimage, then Portia becomes the priestess or the god residing in Belmont, to whom Bassanio has shown a secret pilgrimage. So this is dealt in detail in the later part of the play. So here Antonio is asking Bassanio to tell him about his plans and also to tell him about the lady to whom he had promised to visit secretly in Belmont. It is in response to this that Bassanio makes this speech. He says, "It is not unknown to you, Antonio, how much I have disabled mine estate by something showing a more swelling port than my faint means would grant continuance." So since Antonio is a very close and dearest friend of Bassanio, therefore nothing is unknown to Antonio about the condition of Bassanio. Antonio very well knows about Bassanio and also about his financial status. Bassanio here admits before Antonio that he had disabled his own estate. He has squandered all his wealth, all his means and resources by living in a rather grand style, by leading a very extravagant life. So Antonio used to lead his life very extravagantly. He used to maintain a grand style in his life, and therefore he has spent all his wealth, and resources in leading such a life. And he holds himself to be responsible for that. He frankly admits before Antonio that he has squandered means wasted, carelessly wasted all his money and wealth in leading his life in a very riotous way. And now his faint means, his moderate, limited resources does not allow him to continue with such a lifestyle. But he makes it clear before Antonio that he has not come to Antonio to complain or to lament that he is forced to give up such a lifestyle, or he is forced to cut down his expenses. That is not his intention. But his chief intention, his chief care, concern at that particular moment is to come off from the great depths where in his time something too prodigal hath left him engaged. So his main concern at this particular moment is to get honorably clear of all his debts which his extravagant youth has engaged him into. And here we should take note of that Bassanio compares himself to the prodigal son in Christ's parable. And we need to know that parable because there is time and again reference to this prodigal son in different parts of the play. So here he refers to the story of the prodigal son. So the parable of the prodigal son, which is also known as the parable of the two brothers, lost son, loving father, or of the forgiving father. So these are the different names by which this parable is known. This parable is one of the parables of Jesus in the Bible, and it appears in Luke's chapter 15 verse 11 is to 32. Jesus shares this parable with his disciples, the Pharisees and others. In the story of the prodigal son, a father has two sons. The younger son asked for his share of inheritance from his father, who grants his request. That is, his father gives him the share of his inheritance. This son, however, is prodigal. That is, he is wasteful and extravagant, and he squanders all his money. Having obtained the share of his inheritance, he started living a life in a very extravagant scale. At that particular moment, when he had money in his pocket, he was surrounded by many friends. He was lured by many women also at that particular moment. But eventually, because of this riotous living, he squanders, he wastes away all his wealth, and finally he becomes a destitute. That is, he is abandoned by all his friends when his wealth is over. As a consequence, he, having no other alternative with him, he eventually returns to his father and begs his father to accept him back, not as his son, but as a servant. To the son's surprise, he is not scorned by his father, but he is welcomed with celebration and a welcoming party. His elder brother, that is the elder son of the old man, was annoyed and refused to participate in the celebration. At this, the father tells him, "You are ever with me, and all that I have is yours." but the younger brother was lost and now he is found. So the father forgives the younger son and welcomes back the younger son. So here Bassanio compares himself with the prodigal son. Just like the prodigal son had squandered all his wealth, his share of inheritance, same way Bassanio had also spent all his wealth. He has squandered all his resources and means. But Bassanio does not make any complaint here. And at the same time, we cannot blame Bassanio for such a lifestyle, because it was a usual custom during the Elizabethan time that there were many young people who used to lead a very extravagant lifestyle on the borrowed money. So Bassanio also was leading such a lifestyle. So he does not complain to be abridged. He does not complain to be forced to cut down his expenses, but his chief concern now is to honorably clear all his debts. And as far as Antonio is concerned, he owes Antonio the most. Why? Because he has often borrowed money from Antonio in the past, and now also he depends upon Antonio for the money. He owes Antonio the most, both in matters of money as well as in love, because Antonio used to consider him to be his dearest friend. And since he is so close to Antonio, since he considers Antonio to be his dearest friend, and this love of Antonio towards Bassanio gives him the assurance that he must disclose all his schemes, plans, and intentions to Antonio. So therefore, he decides to disclose all his schemes and purposes to Antonio, that how Bassanio had thought of clearing his debts. So here we come to know that one of the reasons why Bassanio wants to go to Belmont to get married with Portia, because he knows that Portia is the rich heiress of Belmont. And once Bassanio gets married with Portia, he would have the right to all the property of Portia and also the wealth of Portia. So in other words, Bassanio would become a wealthy person. And once he becomes wealthy, he would be able to clear all his previous loans as well as the present loan. This is how he plans to get honorably out of all his debts. So we'll continue with this. So please do like the video and subscribe my channel. Thank you and stay blessed.